Writing is a lens for processing the world, individual observations, and experiences. What the individual feels, thinks, acts upon is unique, yet also the individual reflects collective experience. Art, which for me is specific, is writing and photography, is both creation and integration. I tell stories with my art. I also integrate past with present in order to ensure a positive, healthy future. Being a writer, becoming an author is a dream I always wanted. Life got in the way, like it does for most of us and most of our dreams. In 2005, I was in a war zone, my third war zone, actually. I realized that if I got home, it was long past time for me to focus on achieving those dreams of my child and young adulthood. I write narrative. I formally studied narrative and have a Master of Fine Arts in that genre of nonfiction. This year I'm concentrating on poetry, and I've discovered my intrinsic default form encompasses creating narrative, telling a story versus communicating compelling emotion, though emotion is often the thread in the narrative. I've a number of narrative essays published, a couple pieces of fiction, a few poems, a book that was independently published. I lack the formal education of a poet. In fact, when I was in my MFA program, the poets had the most academically challenging courses of study than the other two genres. I found it very challenging in those electives because I didn't have the language of poetics. I've considered returning to school for a poetry MFA, but an established poet I greatly respect recommended I explore poetry workshops first before embarking upon another graduate degree. Given I'm decade or two even from being free from the first degree's debt, I think this is probably sound advice. Writing is in my fabric of being. I want to reflect the collective by communicating the individual story or experience, and in that process, bring disparate people closer. If there is one perspective I write from, it's that we all have more in common than different. There are a number of experiences that inform my writing. Overarching in my life is my journey in the military over 33 years, reserve and active duty. Other than the military, my other experiences are I've been homeless, I've gone without food, I've been victimized and abused, I've risen from defeated shadows. And it's not all been bad. I've had a lot of good times. I've been a champion fencer, played on a champion rugby team, traveled, explored a lot of things. Writers are told write what you know, which seems to translate more accurately to write about where you've been and what you've done, or who you've known. And if that's the fodder, I've got plenty to call upon. Besides writing and the toddler and baby wrangling I do, I'm also active with my local Veterans of Foreign Wars post, the American Legion, and women veteran issues locally. I help out my local food bank, work on humane control of feral cats, and I keep a pretty nice garden. I make a mean freezer pickle. In a few hours a week, late at night usually, I make the trek to Azeroth as a Tauren enhancement shaman or a dwarf rogue. For much of the last dozen years, I was either mobilized on active duty, training to return to active duty, or recovering from an earlier deployment on active duty. This constant military demand had financial and career consequences. The last 6 years of my reserve career, I held key staff or command positions, and the military sucked up the majority of my time. Now I'm retired, a disabled veteran, and the majority of my time is devoted to being a good mom for my kids, a good wife for my spouse. The 2 writing workshop residencies are brief interludes where I'll be able to devote all my attention and focus on also becoming a good poet. Thank you so very much for your support.